entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
We live in a world where men are told it's harmless. It's just entertainment. But let's stop lying to ourselves. Pornography destroys. It weakens your spirit. It dulls your drive. And it robs you of what real intimacy is supposed to be. Every click is a step away from the man you're supposed to be. We can't call ourselves leaders if we are slaves to a screen.
As someone that is prior service, I know all about discipline. And discipline isn't out there, it's within your mind. Porn rewires your brain, weakens your will, wrecks all of your relationships. It doesn't just stay on a screen, it invades your marriage, your confidence, and your actual purpose. As men, if we don't learn to discipline ourselves, we'll be ruled by our impulses. Now, it is time to stand up and take control before this silent war takes more than you're willing to lose.
Real men don't hide in the shadows of shame. We step up and we protect what's ours. We fight for our wives and kids, our own hearts. Twitter isn't just an app, it's a weapon. It's a tool used to break free and start living like the man that you're meant to be. The battle's here and it starts with you. You can stop living in shame and you can break free today.
Of Q Broadcast, it's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part, there are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
We live in a world where men are told it's harmless. It's just entertainment. But let's stop lying to ourselves. Pornography destroys. It weakens.
Here at the Anomic Age, we know that these times of uncertainty are stressful. It is incumbent upon all of us to put our fears first and bow down to government tyranny. Gone are the days of freely leaving your home, working, and social interactions. In exchange for safety, we will trade liberty. At the Anomic Age, we understand. However, just in case you want to get off your knees and stop being a sniveling coward, check out the John Age Project at anomicage.com.
Meet Ann Morrissey, who is here with her daughter, Dareth. Dareth is 17 years old. Mrs. Morrissey, I don't have to tell you that most parents would be extremely depressed if their daughter came home one day looking like this. I assume that was your response: shock, anger, depression? What was it?
I was extremely angry. I really went bananas.
Yeah, how old was she when this happened?
Possibly 13, 14 years old.
We're talking like it's a disease, isn't it?
Well,
Yeah. How did she explain it to you, Mrs. Morrison?
there was very poor communication until we went into counseling. And it almost broke up our family. But through counseling and Serena, I can understand it better.
What do you understand?
That she feels like she doesn't want to be like everyone else, and she wants to be her own person. And through the dress code and her lifestyle, she's expressing this. It doesn't conform with our rules, but we're learning to cope, and it's a very, very difficult thing. Extremely difficult.
Dareth, let's let you talk for yourself. You're from Long Beach, California.
I just can't handle being like everybody else because that's what everybody else wants, you know.
You know something is wrong, and it's time to stand up. You are listening to The John Age Show.
Trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no one.
You found it. You're here. You're headlong down the runaway train that is the anomic age. I'm your host, John Age. Thanks for being with us today in the not so wee hours of the PM. Please check out anomicage.com if you've not already done so. Like all the likes, subscribe to all the subscriptions there. PayPal.me/anomicage, Patreon.com/anomicage as well. If you are so inclined, that's going to be the best places to find all things me. And also, we got the free app, the free newsletter, subscribe by email link, all that and so much more right there at anomicage.com. So please check that out if you've not already done so. And if you're checking out the live stream right now, it's going to be available right there at anomicage.com. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, rocking out live right now. So thanks if you're tuning into that. If not, you can get the full segment of the show, anomicage.com. Curtis Stone is our guest today. Thank you so much, Curtis. Urban farmer. Curtis Stone is a farmer, author, content creator, and so much more. If you're looking for his information as far as the URLs, they're up there at the homepage. The main one, we got freedomfarmers.com. Curtis, how are you, sir? Thank you so much for being with us and hanging out today.
Happy to be here, John. Yeah, doing great. Having a nice, easy transition into winter.
Yeah, not too bad up there yet, huh?
No, it's lovely. It's last winter was snowpocalypse right away, but this winter we're waxing, waning, and so getting things ready on the homestead for a lot of snow, but it's not here yet, so it's all good.
Perfect, man. Well, I'm excited to have you on. I couldn't believe when I was looking at the dates. It was 2019, I think, when we last talked, which was way back to like episode 50, which seems like forever ago. And I guess it was, but it doesn't seem like it sometimes.
Yeah. Well, a lot's changed for me in that time. I'll tell you that. I'm not living in the city anymore. I'm not an urban farmer anymore. And so, yeah, no, it's been, and that was before the whole COVID debacle too, right? So, yeah, it's been a while.
Well, what's been going on in Canada there? I know you're over the border, so it's a little bit different, different everything. What's going on? What's happening? What's on your radar?
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't think anything's different. I think the New World Order is in full operation mode around the world. And really, if you don't get lost in the minutia of the pointless political narratives, it really is all the same thing. It's all just the same old bullshit. But I live off grid now, so I don't see any of it except for when I go on Twitter and check in on people, But other than that, we live a really cool off-grid lifestyle. We're growing a ton of our own food. We live on a large acreage now. I've been developing ponds and all kinds of food forests and more gardens, building more greenhouses, and just doing what I love doing, but doing it for more of the reason of being able to survive a war of attrition.
Yeah.
So, that's what's going on here.
And that makes so much sense, man. I think I actually talked to some kids yesterday and just kind of talking about how everybody can sort of be a mentor for somebody, whether or not they know it or not. People are looking up to you. I mean, I'm speaking to you today, but I mean, everybody. And I love what you're doing because I think it is inspirational to so many people. I mean, my wife and I are talking about the same thing that you already did, talking about, man, we got to get out of the city and get just away from this nonsense because it's such a toxic existence. I don't think I'm breaking news to anybody, but it's such a toxic existence.
No, it is. And it's toxic on every level. And now, post, lockdowns and, insanity we had for a couple of years, a lot of that toxicity in people's minds didn't go away. The woke mind virus turned into the fear of pandemic virus. And then now it's turned into fear of the latest thing. You know, what do they want to get you in today? They want to get you arguing about Israel and Palestine. They want to get you into supporting a pointless war in Ukraine. They want to get you into hating your neighbor, right? They want to get you into as much fear and paranoia as they can. But, you know, on the other side of that, if you choose to not engage with it and choose not to live in that, you can actually craft yourself a fairly nice life. I still think it's just as possible to be free as it ever was. And I wonder sometimes if it's actually getting easier as the BS is getting easier to see. The solutions are in a way are easier. It's not that it's easy to do those things, but to see the path out is easy. And I think, you know, that's kind of where I'm at these days, is I just look at all the nonsense going on and I go, how can anybody not see this? Is it, you know, it's like every major leader of every Western country in the world's a total buffoon.
Yes. And
that almost seems intentional, because it almost seems like some form of gaslighting to the population. But again, it's so easy to see the lie. After COVID, like, they can't really do anything else that you're going to believe ever again. So yeah, in a way, I'm kind of optimistic about, you know, people's ability to get away from it. It's just, will you choose to do it or not? And it always comes down to a choice.
I think that's so spot on, man. And like, for whatever reason, I've been thinking this for the last couple of days, kind of like approaching this interview with you, because I was so excited about it. But this prospect of being ungovernable, don't be governable. And I mean, I know last time we talked, we even got into the old school punk and hardcore days and all that stuff. And it's like you're a million miles away from, I think, a lot of that right now. And I think that does kind of serve as an example to like, hey, you can do this, whether or not you're in the most urban environment, whether or not you're on the right, the left, whatever in between. Like, you can be ungovernable. There's steps that we can take in order to make that happen. And I think you've done that incrementally. And like you said, now you're on the acreage, you got the fam and everybody out there, you know, you're living the dream so much. So
yeah. And well, yeah. And I honestly, I feel like I pinch myself sometimes. I mean, it's so beautiful up here on this mountain, especially in the winter. We get above these cloud inversions, and every morning is just blessed, where I can look down. The valley below is all in clouds. We're in the sunshine. I get these like epic sunrises. But even when you get here, it's all work. You know, I got to get up and do my chores. I got to go feed the chickens. I just moved them into their winter coop. You know, I got to do the things that I got to do. I'm working on this pond right now. I got to pump water into it. I want to get a nice skating rink for winter, so I'm pumping that up before it freezes. You know, there's always things to do, and so it's kind of, in a way, it's always about the journey. You know, and it's there is no real getting here and then that's it. You close the book. You know, in a way, that's when you open the book and you turn the page to the next chapter and it begins. You know, but I, you know, when I look back on my life, you know, I've been doing this stuff for 14 years, urban farming, and then coming to where I am now. And I look back and I remember times at the beginning when I was struggling so hard, and I just remember thinking, oh, I can't wait until I'm just better at this and things happen faster for me, you know. But then when I think about those times now, I think they're some of the best times of my life, even though I was struggling. But it was that path towards something better that was so fun and exciting. And you know, I think, yeah, if I could bestow some bit of wisdom to maybe younger folks that are in a different stage of the journey, is that don't forget to enjoy the journey, despite the urgency of it. The way it seems today, it seems like there's a bit more of an urgency just with what's going on. At the same time, don't stop to smell the roses, you know, just, I mean, stop to smell the roses here and there, because it's all your life and it's all a fun journey. And if you ever stop working towards something better, then life would be so boring. And so it's, no matter where you are, you're in that trajectory. And it's such an important part of it. And so, you know, I don't let any of the New World Order stuff bother me. I laugh at it as often as I can. It's fun to make fun of Klaus Schwab, you know. It's fun to have a laugh at these goons every now and then, but only laugh at them. If they piss you off and they get under your skin, then they win, because they want you to be angry, right? They want you to get you into that low frequency mind state where it's ill will, and you're wishing ill will on people, whether it's Klaus Schwab or the neighbor you don't like. It doesn't matter. My whole kind of perspective in the world is just do good all the time, and just always be the best for people, and the best for your family, and the best for yourself. And life's just so much more fun and enjoyable despite the urgency.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something I've learned the hard way over the years, is like all that resentment and holding grudges and animosity towards people, that just does more harm on you than it does the actual person that you got all this animus towards. So, you got to put the stuff down eventually, just live your own life and say, forget about these people, basically.
Absolutely.
I mean, in this show, I've tried to take it a little bit more humorous lately, because I found myself kind of going down that dark hole of like, the more this mess you consume, you just get darker, like that abyss thing will affect you just as bad as anybody else. So
it does. What's actually been really, the thing that's been so kind of liberating for me, I had a long journey of calling it taking the red pill. Yeah. Because my dad was actually my first real red pill back in, I would have been 20 years old. It was when I first went to college, and I left my hometown of Kelowna to go to this music school in Nelson, BC. And it was about a 4-hour drive away. And I remember that drive, my dad was moving me to Nelson and all my stuff in the back of his truck. And we were having we had these conversations, and he told me about the central banking system. And it was actually where I woke up, but began this journey of questioning, what the hell? Why? How is it that there's just a small group of bankers that can pretty much own the world? That was my first red pill, and going. I guess I'm 44 now, so 24 years later, here I am knowing a lot more than I knew back then. Though the journey's still very similar, but where I'm at now is that the more you learn about the system, if you can look for solutions and focus on solutions, that knowledge can actually be very liberating, and it can take you to it can help you find freedom, because without knowledge there is no freedom. Without say the proverbial secret key or the lockpick to get you out of the prison cell, but the prison of your mind, you'll just never get out. And so you have to take those steps. And I've spent so much time actually looking at the stuff, and it was a black pill for a long time. It's like there's that sort of cliche of, you start with the red pill, then you get to the black pill, right? Because then it gets really dark. You get into the child sex trafficking and all that shit. Mm-hmm. And then you get depressed by it. But if you are constantly working towards solutions for yourself, and for me, it's been the motivation of seeking prosperity in some way or another. And I can seek prosperity in so many different ways, whether it's my knowledge of the law, my knowledge of gardening, my knowledge of my health, knowledge of just how to be a good person in the world that you live in. All these things require learning something and applying it, and then hoping for a better result. And so I guess for me, I've really kind of focused on things like the 8 forms of capital, in that if I put my energy into developing capital in things outside of finance only being one of them, then I can sort of have a diversity of assets and things that get me out of the system, because they're things that I can control. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of what my off-grid journey, my homestead here, is taking control of my food, taking control of my water, taking control of my electricity and the power that we use, everything. And the food, all these things get more complicated. We're also building a house. The more you can diversify into those ideas, the more your life will be within your control, not somebody else's control. Because if you don't take responsibility for your life, somebody else is happy to take responsibility for it, right? And we all know our friends at the World Economic Forum and the UN would love to take control of your life, and they've got a really good plan for you and your family.
That's so spot on, man. Good grief. It's so spot on. You said a world worth of information right there. But everything you said goes back to that ungovernable thing again. You got to be ungovernable, and you got to start baby stepping, because I think this has been a multi-generational thing where they've sort of thrown, oh, well, you don't need a doctor, or excuse me, that they're saying you need a doctor. You don't need this natural health and natural healing. We got that. Oh, you don't need to grow your own food. Go to the market. You don't need X, Y, and Z. And before you know it, you're in that prison of your own making. You're in that rat in a cage scenario all over again.
It is. And the thing is, it's important to not lose sight of the fact that it is a prison of our own making.
Yes.
Because, you know, all these things, it's about stepping up. And you know, when I think about what does the New World Order want? They mostly just want you in a cage, but how are they going to get you in the cage? Well, it turns out that it's easier to get you into the cage if they just let you walk yourself in.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, call it the devil versus God. The devil wants you to do nothing. The devil wants you just to take whatever easy, convenient route will get you into the cage. And most people are willing to do that. They'd rather do that than the hard road, which I think is the path towards God, is to take responsibility and own it, own your life. If you don't own your life, the devil will own it. And so God, I think, wants us to step up. And I think when I really pull the lens back and think about the time that we're in, my gut sense is that we're in a time of responsibility, in the sense that we're in a time of absolute convenience at the same time. So it's kind of like the parable of what's the story where it says it was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ultimate dichotomy of existence, is that as technology, communication, services the government and corporations provide get more available and easier to use and engage with than ever, at the same time, the need to get away from those things and take the responsibility for your life is also greater than ever. So it is the best of worst times, or it is the best and worst times at the same time.
And I think so much of it kind of goes back to that maturation. I mean, you were talking about how all this requires work. I think a lot of people sort of think, oh, great, I'm just going to move out here and throw some money at it, and I'm actually going to turn into, you know, farmer like Curtis here. But that's not really the case. And I think that's so much puzzle here. I think that maturation process is so key too, because we've got to take the responsibility and that ownership of ourselves, of our family, of our food, water, and everything, like you said. And, you know, the society now wants to just promulgate that forever adolescence, that sort of Peter Pan thing. Oh, well, you can just live into your 30s in your mom's basement and somebody will care for you. But I mean, what you're talking about is the opposite of that. And I think that's why it's sort of that clash of two different realities. You got people wanting one thing and wanting the other.
That it, you know, and look at where we are is that is the result. Look at young men today, for the most part. I mean, I see guys all the time in their 30s that are going grocery shopping with their mom.
Yeah.
You know, that's a common sight. I see that all over. And can you blame young people? Like, they say that the people are more warm to the idea of communism than ever. And young people that are getting churned out of the, you know, the indoctrination camp of the public school system, and it's the same in the university system as well. But can you blame them? Because they come out of this thing where they've never had to take responsibility, but then they're told day in and day out that to enjoy the fruits of civilization or your hard work is to be a climate criminal. And so, you know, you have this endless guilt for doing anything, which pretty much cripples the motivation of a lot of young people to say, oh, what's the point?
Yeah.
Why would I bother?
That's so true, man. It's just a stark reality, like the two different worlds that we live in. I mean, you painted such a great picture kind of earlier on about sitting on the mountain there and looking above the clouds. That's so beautiful, man. And just juxtapose that to, like you said, where you were like 15, 20 years ago, where like so many people are today, like they get up, it's let's get in the car, let's drive the kids to school, let's go to the job. And I think those two realities are just so stark for people. It's so hard to envision something beyond what you've never known, if that makes any sense.
Well, it makes total sense, because that's the crux of the issue in so many ways, is that you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so, but that's what our society does, and that's why you need to break out of the matrix. But the society creates that false narrow view. So through propaganda or media via propaganda creates this tunnel vision for you that just is gatekeeping what the truth is, get you into this false dichotomy of this thing or the other. Oh, you're either for Israel, you're for Palestine. You're either for the Rona or you're not wearing the mask. You're wearing the mask, or you're not wearing the mask, or whatever the dichotomy they want to throw you the day is. That's what they do. They limit you into that. And it's the same thing with politics. Just, you're either for Trump or you're for Biden. I mean, it's so, it doesn't take very much intelligence to see how false all of it is, but people are just so locked into the conveniences of their life that that's really where they get you. And I think it comes down to this sort of it's like the Orwellian dystopia, where it's a society motivated by pain and fear, or the Aldous Huxley dystopia of Brave New World, where a society is motivated by convenience and pleasure. And so I think we've gone where the New World Order would like to take us is the one via the Aldous Huxley idea, because it's actually easier, is that they'll just walk themselves in there. Whereas if you want to have a totalitarian state that really needs fear and pain, you have to inflict that. And that's hard to do. It's harder to do, especially because a lot of people who work in the government might not want to do it. And so you can incentivize people in a lot more of a passive way if you move towards motivating them by pleasure or convenience. And it's also sort of a fear of ostracism too, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we saw with the pandemic and all that, is people being feared of being called an anti-masker or an anti-vaxxer.
Yeah. And I won't go off too much of a jag here, but I mean, I think probably for folks like ourselves, that was just funny because, I mean, at least for me, I was like, ostracized again? What a new concept. I was like,
yeah,
I've been dealing with this since I was like 12, like, yeah, I'm the funny skateboard kid or the kid with the spiky hair or whatever. Like, so now it's like, oh, you don't like me because of this non-mask thing. Okay, well, shucks.
I know. Yeah, and in a way, looking back, it was kind of an easy thing to deal with in that regard, because the divisions of where you were going to make your decision was so easy.
Yeah.
But it got a little, depending on where you lived, it got a little relentless and wearing at times. For 2 years, I mean, my wife and I, we did the best we could to just not have our children subjected to any of the BS. We didn't want our kids seeing groups of people wearing masks or all that. So it was at times challenging because we had to kind of shelter our kids through that. But there's times where they were really both young at the time though. So, our daughter understood it a little bit more, or we'd have to explain it to her. Our son was a baby, so it didn't matter so much because he wasn't interacting with those people. But to have to explain that to your kids, like, why are we not wearing masks and why are they wearing masks? And but thankfully that phase passed, because it was but I'm sure they got something cooked up next. So
of course,
not holding my breath.
I'm going to not throw my own family under the bus here, but loosely, because I think that fear mechanism and kind of like what we were talking about, that not knowing what you don't know thing is kind of what keeps so many people in the matrix. And I'll just use the obvious example that I always talk about with my own family. We'll mention, but we have a retirement, but we have this steady income. So they're afraid to do what you did. They're afraid to say, screw all this. We're selling the whole kit and caboodle and we're moving to somewhere we don't even know. And we're just rolling the dice. That was not quite what you did. I know, but I think for so many people, it's such an epic leap to leave behind that steady income with the 401k and the benefits. And, we're 20 minutes from a store. That's a heck of a roll of the dice for so many people. What brought that strength out of you and, to say, we got this?
Well, I think, in all fairness, like that, what you painted there wasn't necessarily exactly me, because my income has been online for a long time. I had a lot of things that made it possible for me to make this decision. And this decision is easier or harder for everybody's, different, right? And it has different circumstances. So for us, it wasn't that hard. My wife used to work, was a professional photographer for many years and had a good income at that, but she chose to be a stay-at-home mom. And so because she made that decision, my income was online. I can essentially live anywhere now. It was actually easier than ever. Not to take away from your point though. It took a lot of strength because it wasn't easy. There was a lot of things that needed to be done to make this happen. We had to sell our house, pack everything up, change a lot of things in our life, no question about it. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but at the same time, I wasn't that inhibited by, say, a pension. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time now. I don't pay it in a pension. I don't give the government, that's stupid, that amount of money each month. I never really did, actually. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. So, I didn't have to walk away from that. For us, it was more walking away from some of the conveniences of the city and replacing them for hardships or responsibilities here, because we have to take responsibility for our food. This morning I had to go feed the chickens, and I finished moving them into this new greenhouse and coop area. But I, harvested some potatoes, collected the eggs, went and we did a little grocery shopping at the same time, got a couple rewards for our work. And so it was just taking on more of those things. But the way I see it is, once you take that step to go towards something that involves more responsibility for the things that you need in your life, there's actually so much inherent pleasure and joy and reward in those actions. And that's what I think I always just, I guess I just live those things every day, that for all the things that would make me angry about society, when I just look at my day-to-day life and the things that I do to live, I really enjoy these things. And they help with the, our kids are learning all these things and enjoying them too. Like my kids, one of the favorite things for them to do is to help me harvest potatoes. And it's really helpful because they're actually good at it. And they really find a lot of fun. Every time they pull a big one up, they're like, "Whoa, Dad, look at this one," and it's super fun. And so, yeah, that responsibility comes with it a greater sense of purpose. And for me, it's like kind of going back to those 8 forms of capital, is that if I can stack functions in my life, in the sense that instead of just going to work to go to a job to get money, money's taxed, it's inflated, it's coerced one way or the other, or incentivized one way or the other. And then there's so many complications with all that money. Whereas if you have to use that money to go and buy food, just going out and pulling the food out of the ground seems so much more simple. And there's just so many net benefits for that, whether it's the education of my kids, the experience itself, the building of my soil. There's so many wins. And that's why I'm such a huge advocate for people to get on the land as best as they can, because it really is a way to stack so many functions in your life. Because right now, the New World Order wants to siphon off every little bit of energy you have in your life. Mm-hmm. And create roadblocks for you. But when you get it onto the land, yes, it involves more responsibilities, no question. But those responsibilities and those rewards stack into so many different facets of your life that I really think it's something that I encourage people to do, basically.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to throw the intended pun out there, I think once you start saying no to their BS, it becomes infectious. And I think that was kind of one of the unintended consequences with the COVID psyop, is because it allowed people, even on the smallest of scales, to say, "No, I'm good. I don't want a mask." You don't have to be a complete jerk, but sometimes you have to. But just those small little, just saying no on this tiny scale, that'll give you that internal drive or that confidence or temerity or what have you, to be like, "Oh yeah, I don't have to say yes to all this malarkey. We can just say, forget about X, Y, and Z and just start being our own self-governing people." The COVID psyop really gave people that opportunity to start saying no on these smaller items. And then that confidence builds and they begin to be more self-confident, say, "No, I can say no to more and more things that the governments are throwing at us."
Yes, exactly. You can say no, because at the root of it all, and this is something I've been trying to just kind of show people on my Twitter feed lately, is that there's a reason why it's important. Like I always try to red pill people with the government being a corporation. And so if they're Americans, I point them towards the 1871 Organic Act, which shows how the idea or the United States was converted into a corporation in Washington, D.C. And then in Canada, how you can find Canada as a corporation registered on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. I show people that. And anybody who's really smart, like some people just blows them away and they go, I don't know what to do with this information. But then somebody who's really smart will say something similar, but it'll be a bit more proactive in that, okay, now that I know that, why is that important for me and what can I do with it? It's that if everything is a corporation, everything is business, to do business, it requires a number of things. It requires a meeting of the minds. If you want to do a contract with somebody, you have to have a meeting of the minds. You have to have full disclosure. And you have to have consent. Mm-hmm. And so it fundamentally shows you that if everything is a business and everything is a corporation, it fundamentally comes down to consent. And you might ask, well, how do I know that I'm consenting to one thing or the other? And the answer is you often don't. But it's because you never read the terms of service.
Yeah.
And with every law, there's a terms of service. It's a statute, it's an ordinance, it's whatever you want to call it in legalese. It's there, it's written. And there's an old legal maxim that says ignorance is not an excuse in a court of law. It essentially means that just because you didn't know doesn't mean that you weren't in the wrong. And we all know that what's illegal or legal isn't a question of what's wrong or right, but it is what they call, you don't want to be in default. And so the more you know, the more free you can be, but it's, you have to know that it is all consent. I mean, and there's always a way out. I mean, case in point here in British Columbia, when they brought the mask mandate, yeah, they published the statute or the mandate. And a mandate, if you look at the legal definition, is a decision that's made within a organization, but it is voluntary. And so you can look up any statute and find a remedy. You just have to read the thing. And in the British Columbia mandate, it was only about 2 or 3 pages long, but right there in Article 4, it gave a remedy that said that if you have a medical reason to not wear a mask, you don't have to wear a mask. It didn't say that they're going to ask you what that medical reason is. They didn't say you had to have a particular one according to whether you have asthma or this, that, and the other. It just says if you have a medical reason. And it's very easy to see that breathing is a good medical reason to not wear a mask. And so the remedies are there. They're always in plain sight. It's just, do people take the time to own that? And most people don't.
That's so true, man. That's so true. I don't know if we have time for all of them, but could you get into some of these 8 different aspects? Because I think a lot of people, when they think of, I go to my 9 to 5, I get a paycheck, that's it. That's my big take home. But they're kind of leaving out some of the freedoms that you get from doing what you're doing. I mean, you get to be with your children, yes. You get to be with your wife, you get to spend that quality time. And when it comes down to whatever job you're doing that takes you away, it's really just, they're paying you money for time. They're paying, here's some money for the time that you just urinated away from what your focus should be.
Exactly. So there are, the 8 forms of capital. It's really worth checking out. I've talked about them for years. So financial capital, we all understand, right? It's financial capital is a pretty broad one because when you really look at the whole grand scheme of things, there's a lot of different types of finances, right? There's currency, there's real money like gold and silver. I call Bitcoin real money because it's not somebody else's liability. Like any type of financial asset that's somebody else's liability isn't really yours. Whether it's a stock or a bond or even a dollar, the value of those things is totally out of your hands. And not the value, but the possession of those things is out of your hands because the stock can collapse and lose its value. A dollar or a currency unit can be printed into inflation. But a unit of Bitcoin or a piece of gold and silver is, you can control that and take it. And so that's financial capital. Then you have something like social capital, which is your relationships that actually have intrinsic value, right? If you're a good person, you have goodwill, that always comes back to you. So that's actually an asset that you can control because you can either choose to be a good person or not. family capital, your family, your relationship with your family. That's actually a resource, right? If you have a family, that's something. If you don't have a family, then you don't have much family capital. Experiential capital, the experiences you live in your life, guide and make who you are. That's super important, because some people have a lot of experience in one particular way and some people have none. One here that's on my homestead that's super important is natural capital. So when you have the ability to own land and put roots down, as they say, you can now create natural capital. So for me, I built 2 ponds this season that can hold accumulatively about 2 million liters of water. I've planted trees on my property. I've done all kinds of earthworks to move, store, or shed water. I've built gardens. These are natural forms of capital. My chickens are a natural form of capital. You've got stored capital, such as things like resources, tools, equipment that you have. And having land and a place to put that stuff also helps you accumulate that type of capital, right? Mm-hmm. You have knowledge and information. Information is a form of capital, right? You can store that. You can use it to better yourself. So you have all these different forms of capital, and another one would be cultural capital. The cultural experiences that are shared amongst a group of people, a family, or whatnot. So these are all forms of capital, and financial capital is only one of them. And the neat thing about them is that they kind of intersect in some ways, and that you can use natural capital to produce financial capital, right? I can use my farm to produce money. I could take money to produce natural capital. I can take money and go and buy some trees, or I can go and buy some equipment or whatever. But the idea is when you have this perspective, you can arrive at this sort of holistic view of how, there's many different ways to look at the world holistically, but this is one of my favorites, is that you can have a really holistic view of how you can store capital to better your life, to work towards prosperity. And money's only one of them. And when you're stuck in the money game, that's a bit of a rat race. Because anybody who's read books from, say, like financial books, like Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, understands that the rich, the very rich, they know about the 8 forms of capital very well. And they know to not keep they don't hold big amounts of dollars. They hold enough so that they can spend here and there. But the rich get their money into assets, right? They buy land, they build homes, they buy apartment complexes, they buy off governments, right? Whatever it is. But you don't want to hold an asset, no matter what it is, if you can't control it. At least not for long. Some of these things are transitory, and that's kind of by their nature, and that's okay. But this whole perspective was super liberating for me when I learned about the 8 forms of capital, because you live your life thinking that money is everything, and the system is based on money, and that's kind of how it is. But that doesn't mean it has to control you that way. You can move in and out of that state at your desire.
That's so spot on, man. I swear. I know I've said that 3 times probably during our interview, but it's so true, man. And I think, that perspective a lot of people have, like, oh, if I move out in the middle of nowhere, I'm going to lose all my connections and my contacts. And I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, you could speak to that more than anybody, but I don't think that's happening.
No, it's not for us. And, and you also meet new people. I can tell you that I have more close friends here in this tiny area. Well, we're super rural. We're not even in a town, but we're 20, 30 minutes out of a town, still a fairly small town. But I have more close friends here than I did in the bigger city that I lived in, Kelowna. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that when you choose to live more intentionally, you would rather spend your time on quality things than quantity things. Mm. And so if you move towards more of a qualitative over quantitative perspective, you can be just as social in a rural area as you would in the big city. And anybody who's lived in a big city for a period of time can tell you it's very easy to feel lonely in a big city.
Yes.
You know, I lived in Montreal for 6 to 8 years, and I felt very lonely and empty and couldn't connect with people. So it can happen anywhere.
And that social capital aspect is so key, because I think a lot of people get those two conflated and they think, oh man, I've got all these friends, whether they're real or imaginary in their urban setting. But I think the social capital aspect is so key, because the real friends you want are the ones that are going to be there to help you when whatever craziness happens, the hot water heater goes out, or there's a, something crazy that you need help. You need to call somebody right then. You don't want to try to dial like 7 or 8 people to see if somebody can help you.
The best people to spend your time with or to surround yourself with are people that are are friends that are there for you in hard times. Everybody wants to be around in the good times, but a real friend is somebody who's there to be with you all the way. And I mean, for me, the older I've gotten, the more and having a family, you have to just prioritize your time. And do you want to spend it with people that are only there for you for the good times? No, because there are going to be hard times. Everybody experiences hard times in some way or another. And so that's what real friends are. I've found that it's easier to find real friends in this kind of scenario. There's something about people that live in the country that when you live in the country, you just by nature of that have to take ownership and responsibility for your life day in, day out. One example here is we live on this dirt road. It's a rural dirt road. And yeah, there's supposed to be this company that plows. They got the government contract to plow that road in the winter, but sometimes they take 3 days to do it. And so sometimes I just go down and do it because it's not that long of a road, and I've got the equipment, and I got to do my 1 kilometer long driveway anyways. So I go do it. And a lot of my other neighbors are the kind of neighbors that do the same thing. And so there's just something about people in the rural setting. You're more likely to find people who own it. And I find they are just the kind of people I'd rather be around, because they're the people to help you no matter what. Whereas you're living in some apartment complex with 60 units, you don't even know the neighbor across your hallway, most likely.
No.
But when you, and it's an interesting observation too, because those people live in higher confines. So there's more people in a smaller area. You could assume just logically that you might have more interactions with people, but that's not the case, because when you don't need to have a relationship with somebody, you don't. And so most relationships are based on needs and benefits. Yeah. Whereas in the country, you need to have those relationships with people because they just happen, because things go south more often and you have to take responsibility for things. So you get to know people better. So I actually think living in the country with, 1,000 times or 10,000 times less the population that you'd experience in a city, you actually have a better chance of fostering more healthy relationships.
That's at least been my observation. Just build that character. I mean, that's what it boils down to. It strengthens that relationship. It strengthens that bond. And I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And one more aspect, I don't even think you talked about it, but I'm going to throw it in there too, is that when the proverbial stuff hits the fan, you want those people that have been battle tested in whatever the hardship is. And I think especially in the urban centers now, it's everywhere, really, it's ubiquitous, but there's so much mental illness. There's so many people on SSRIs. There's so many people that need their fix of booze, alcohol, drugs, or what have you. And, when they stop giving out the stuff, then there's going to be a whole sort of zombie apocalypse that I don't think most people are even ready for. I know they're not ready for it.
No, they're not. Because, the other thing you didn't mention there, which is connected to what you're talking about, is they're dependent on a litany of things that are bad for them in some way. And one of those things that's really bad for you is government. And the closer you live to large amounts of people, the closer you live to government, because government is just a service corporation and they provide services for people. And so there's this sort of scale I like to think about, whereas from freedom to tyranny, wherever there's tyranny, there's higher concentrations of people, because government goes where people go. And towards freedom, you have less people, but more responsibility. So when the times get tough, People are so dependent on the state and the corporations and services that are provided for them that they won't even be able to manage life. And it is, as you said, a zombie apocalypse. I'd say we're already in the throes of somewhat of that now. Just look at the mental breakdowns people are having. Look at that last thing with the trans shooter, you know, that thing down in Tennessee, and then that they leaked. And just look at that ideology for what it is, just totally objectively. You don't need to even go down the rabbit hole and the history of it all. But where is that manifested? It's manifested in cities because governments provide education for most kids who live in cities. And so where do they get these ideas from? People that are homeschooling their kids out in the country here, we don't see that stuff. We don't see the woke stuff. Not to say that it isn't around, because it is quite pervasive and it's been going for so long, but these are all products of the fact that human beings have been living in cities for a while now, but historically, in the long history of mankind on this planet, we haven't been living in cities very long. And the cities are sort of a failed experiment because people don't like to be cooped up. Like, look at all those experiments they've done with rats and cooping them up. Like, there's that one that's called the Rat Utopia experiment, where they just showed after 100 rats, it just all starts to fall apart.
Yeah, the Universe 25 study. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. But you know, you can see this transpiring right now everywhere. It is the whole idea of the melting pot. You know, the American idea of the melting pot has failed, and the Canadian equivalent is the mosaic, which is this pretentious idea that we can have this politically correct society where everybody lives next to one another and gets along but maintains their heritage. They're both lies. People don't like that. People like to be around their own kind, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this is why cities just are falling apart, and it's getting to the point, especially in some of them, where it's a risk to your life. Look at San Francisco. Look at Vancouver, British Columbia. Absolute hellholes that are dangerous now. They're violent, and since they switched the last switch on the Israeli-Palestine issue, all these, you know, I'm actually on that issue. I'm totally for the Palestinian people, and I don't support Israel in any way. At the same time, a lot of the protesters are just turned on. You know, they're just sleeper cells. They're just completely propagandized, and they don't really know the greater issues. But look at the division that's causing now. You know, a couple of years ago, or even a year ago, we saw Christians and Muslims really coming together in a lot of major cities, especially even in the UK, where the tensions are higher than anywhere, coming together and saying, stop this woke stuff. We want this out of the schools. Now they're all fighting because, the old faithful issue of Israel-Palestine gets flipped on, and now everybody has to assume the position, you know?
Exactly. Yeah,
Ridiculous.
They seem to just pull these right out of the hat when they need them. It's like, oh, it's time for another pile of refuse for everybody. Here, let's flip this false flag. Let's flip this narrative up. And I mean, you said something so profound, and I think it's so spot on. And a lot of people aren't going to love this, but people like to be around their own people in their own spot. I mean, yes, we can all get along. We can have intermarried and interracial children and everything under the sun. But at the end of the day, Asian people usually like to hang out with Asian people. Spanish people love to hang out with Spanish people. That's not racist. That's the culture and heritage for thousands of years. They can intermingle
and it's just
and
convenient.
interact. Yes, that's true.
Yeah. It's just convenient, right? It makes life easier. It's like how I just had to move all my chickens into the greenhouse, and I did it through what I call an Operation Pied Piper, where I basically just I just made a long string of feed from the one coop to the other, opened the greenhouse up, and they just followed the feed into the greenhouse. And then once they got into the greenhouse, they realized, well, this is a much nicer place to be in the winter because it's cold now. And so it's the same thing in that people just, there's nothing wrong with wanting to live an easier life. And so if that means you're surrounded by people that speak your language, well, it's just easier.
Yeah.
The fact that people think these things are racist is just ridiculous because everybody does it, and it's only bad when white people do it. But, you know, there's a Chinatown in every major metropolitan city. You know, is that racist? No, it's just convenient for those people that have migrated to an English-speaking country to be surrounded by people that speak Chinese. Same with, there's a I used to live in Montreal. There's a borough for every demographic in Montreal. There's a Lebanese section, there's a Jewish section, there's a Portuguese section, there's a Chinese section. Hey, that's all well and good. But we could, and maybe that's the better way, that people have to just go, that's your quarter, that's our quarter, so on and so forth. I'd rather just be in an area where there's less people, period, so that I don't have to witness any of the disagreements that some of these cultural groups have from time to time, like Muslims and Jews. When I lived in Montreal, I witnessed it. I saw literally factions of Muslims and Jews fighting. And I don't want to see that stuff. I don't want to live in it.
And I mean, the dirty secret they don't want to tell you is the Amish have been doing this for several hundred years, and they don't have any of these problems. They don't have the ADHD. None. They don't have the vaccine malarkey. Nope. They don't have the cancer rates. They don't have any of the insanity that you'd see, an hour south of an Amish community. I mean, a good friend of mine is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm like, dude, I love you, but I'm not going up there.
Oh,
I hate to say it. There's so many cities that I'm just like, no, I don't want to look for the feces in San Francisco on my feces app. I mean, I'm good. I just don't need that mess.
I know. And that's funny because that actually exists. What you said, that actually exists.
That's true.
It's absolutely madness. And the Amish kind of figured that out, I think, a lot of these communities, Mennonites, Quakers, Amish, we have Hutterites in Canada.
Yeah.
They figured that out. Even when I lived in Montreal, I lived in the Orthodox Jewish area, and they had a similar thing, though they don't really control production in the same way that Amish do, but they have their communities, and they're not dealing with woke BS, their communities take care of the education of the children in that community, So none of this stuff is new. I just think that it's coming to a time where it's easier to see how important that is. And when you look at other communities that don't deal with a lot of the BS that we're dealing with in the Western world, you can say, that maybe now is something that's worth looking at. And to your point about the Amish too, is that they're actually exploding. Amish their populations are doubling. I've recently got involved in evaluating real estate for homesteads, and we have a program that we run now called the Homestead Accelerator, that if people are interested, they go to freedomfarmers.com. But we publish a weekly list of homestead properties. So we go and we evaluate real estate. We start with about 200 listings that we comb through every week, and then we filter that down to about 10 to 15 that are real good, solid, what we call turnkey homestead properties. And we're finding properties in the Amish communities in Kentucky and Ohio that are amazing, because the Amish are moving on to bigger and better properties, but they're selling their properties. You can find, I looked at one property a couple weeks ago, 75 acres. It was an old Amish farm, just incredible. Everything on it is perfect. $350,000, fully operational farm, home, you name it. You can't get that kind of value out here. That same property in British Columbia would be $3 million. But the point I'm trying to make with the Amish is that there's a model of people that's succeeding, and they're doing well for themselves, and they don't care about what anybody in the mainstream media says. They don't watch television. They're not on social media. They're just crushing it in their lives. And I think we could learn a lot from that and those people.
It's so weird, but I think it's so emblematic of the fouled up society we're in, that if all this futuristic transhuman, we're all going to live in a machine kind of mess is so admirable, then why are there so many people seeking people like yourselves and the Amish to get food from? Because the food's so toxic. Yeah. There's people abandoning big pharma because pharma is so toxic. There's people abandoning the cult of academia because academia is so toxic. I mean, it's kind of like you said earlier on, it doesn't take much to figure out how screwed up this all is, because everyone is abandoning ship. Everyone's going, screw this. I'd rather live in a lifeboat than the Titanic right now.
Yeah, I think something that was exciting that happened out of the whole COVID scam was that, and you kind of said this earlier, but I think people, after being lied to so obviously for so long, are starting to learn more and more to trust their intuition and just trust their instinct and trust their gut feeling towards an issue as it comes up. And so, yeah, we're seeing that. I mean, we're helping on a weekly basis facilitate people getting onto the land, and that's a rewarding thing to do. But yeah, we see so many people wanting this now, and yeah, can you blame them? You know, the opportunities vary from state to state, especially in the United States. But you know, the one thing that's great about the U.S., despite the madness that's happening there, but one thing that's still really good about the U.S. is that you have the states that if you don't like the way things are in Pennsylvania, you can just move down to Kentucky and not that far and find a whole different type of culture, political scenario, and even legal scenario that you go, yeah, a place like Kentucky might be a better place to live. This in the U.S., you have that ability to move around, and that's a convenience, right? It's a really nice thing. If you're stuck, you know, we're seeing right now this mass exodus of California. You know, I think California is now a net loser state as far as people. They're losing, I forget what it is, might be 500,000 people a year or something. I don't know if it's that much, but they're losing a lot of people every year. There's more people leaving California than moving to California. And then we're seeing other places in the US where they're just booming because a lot of people are coming together. You see this in, say, like the Ozarks of Missouri. A lot of people moving there. People leave and have not states like California and moving to places of opportunity like the Ozarks in Missouri, you know, or Kentucky, or some parts of Alabama, some northeastern Texas. You know, I'm seeing all these places that there's like some parts of Tennessee too, people just moving to and coming together, starting little communities and just de facto communities of people moving into one regional area and then cooperating with people that are close to you, you know, finding ways to cooperate and work together.
It's kind of like these expatriate communities here in the US and Canada. It's still in the countries, but not so much.
Well, and that's the beauty of the US and Canada, though places are both very different in some ways, but they're still very big countries with fairly low population densities based on total area, right? Yeah. So Canada's a tenth of the population of the United States, and it's actually a technically bigger country, but you're really only going to want to live within a few hundred miles of the US border. Otherwise it just gets too cold. So, but we have that freedom that we can go to areas of very low populations. And when you're really talking about tyranny, as I said earlier, it's mostly governed by how many people are in a particular geographical area. So if you're going to be in an area where there's less people, you're going to experience less tyranny. It's really that simple.
That's so true, man. Well, I hate to do it, but I know we probably run over time today. What's the best places people can find you and even find more information about those 8 points that you mentioned? I know they're out there.
Yeah, if people go on my YouTube channel, which is now Off Grid with Curtis Stone. You can find me. I'm easy to find there. Just search 8 Forms of Capital. I've done videos on it in the past in my playlists there. But the best place to get my information these days is freedomfarmers.com. If people are interested in our Homestead Accelerator, which is a program where we basically find you ideal homestead real estate, they can check that out there. We've got an offer up there right now, where people can sign up for a monthly subscription and have access to all of our courses. So we publish online courses. We've got about 20 up there now and more coming. But people can sign up for, I think it's about $40 a month, and have access to all the courses. That some of these courses cost $500 to $1,000 each. So it's sort of a subscription service that people can sign up for. So yeah, freedomfarmers.com is probably the best place to engage me. And follow me on Twitter at OffGridStone. Some people are watching this here on Twitter right now, but I'm starting to post more content there because I kind of just think it's more rewarding than YouTube. On Twitter, I'm getting almost 1-to-1 followers per view. On YouTube, I get about 1 to 10,000. I'm sort of shadow banned, and YouTube's turning into another Philadelphia or San Francisco. It's just becoming this dystopian liberal hellhole where you can't say the truth anymore. So if you want to hear the truth from me more consistently, follow me there on Twitter at OffGridStone.
Well, thank you so much, Curtis. And if you'll stick around for like 30 seconds, I'll say goodbye to you off the air, man.
Right on, brother.
All right. Thank you so much again. Well, folks, if you missed any of that, fear not. You can check it out at anomicage.com. We'll have the full show, the video and the audio, so you can take me and Curtis with you on the go and listen to it in the car, at the gym, or wherever you happen to be. And as always, please, you can't do everything, but you can do something. So do what you can for as long as you can. I'll be seeing you sooner than later in the Anomic Age.
Thank you for listening to The Anomic Age, a John Age project. For past shows, further info, and to comment, go to anomicage.com. That's ANOMICAGE.com. Till next time, thank you for listening to The Anomic Age.